Have you ever found yourself in a room full of people, all engaged in the same conversation, yet somehow you're hearing something completely different? It's as if you've been given a special pair of glasses that allows you to see beyond the surface-level interactions, beyond the socially acceptable facades, and into the raw truth of what's actually unfolding. This awareness, this ability to perceive what lies beneath the carefully constructed illusions we collectively maintain, comes with a weight that few understand. The journey of awakening consciousness begins with moments like these, moments when you realize that you're perceiving reality through a different lens than those around you. What's fascinating is how this awakening process mirrors what developmental psychologist Jean Piaget discovered about how humans construct knowledge and understanding of the world around them. Just as children move through stages of cognitive development, each building upon the last to create more complex ways of understanding, spiritual awakening follows a similar pattern of expanding consciousness through experiences that challenge our existing mental frameworks. The world today operates on multiple levels of reality simultaneously. There's a surface level that most people navigate comfortably, where social norms and collective agreements create a shared experience that feels stable and predictable. Then there are the deeper currents, the undercurrents of truth that flow beneath these social constructs, revealing the actual motivations, fears, and desires that drive human behavior. Those who have begun to awaken can feel these currents, can sense the disconnect between what is said and what is meant, between what is presented and what actually exists. This awareness doesn't arrive all at once. It emerges gradually, often beginning with subtle feelings of disconnection, or the nagging sensation that something isn't quite right with the accepted narrative. Perhaps you experienced this yourself, that feeling of standing slightly outside a conversation, observing not just the words being exchanged, but the entire ecosystem of unspoken communications, power dynamics, and emotional undercurrents that nobody acknowledges explicitly. This is where the price of seeing begins to reveal itself. When you perceive these deeper layers of reality, you can no longer participate in the collective pretending that characterizes so much of our social interaction. You begin to feel like an observer of a play rather than a participant, watching as people follow scripts they don't even realize they're reading from. The challenge becomes navigating this awareness without becoming cynical, without losing your connection to your own humanity and the humanity of others. Because make no mistake, seeing what others pretend not to see can create a profound sense of isolation. When you recognize patterns that others are blind to, when you feel the dissonance between stated values and actual behaviors, when you perceive the unconscious motivations driving seemingly rational decisions, you may find yourself increasingly unable to engage in superficial exchanges that once felt natural. Piaget's concept of cognitive equilibrium helps us understand this experience. He described how when new information conflicts with our existing knowledge, we experience a state of cognitive disequilibrium, a feeling of discomfort that motivates us to restore balance. We do this either through assimilation, fitting the new information into our existing mental frameworks, or through accommodation, changing our frameworks to incorporate the new reality we're perceiving. The awakening process is essentially a series of profound disequilibriums. As each new level of awareness challenges our understanding of ourselves and the world around us, the difference with a spiritually awakening individual is that while most people's cognitive frameworks are built to maintain stability and comfort, the awakening person's frameworks are being constantly dissolved and reconstructed to accommodate ever more complex and sometimes uncomfortable truths. I want to pause here and ask you directly, when did you first notice that you were seeing things others around you seemed blind to? What was that experience like for you? To suddenly perceive a layer of reality that wasn't being acknowledged by the people in your life. If you're willing to share, type in the comments, I began to see when, and complete that thought with your personal experience. Your story might be exactly what another soul needs to read today to feel less alone in their own awakening journey. I read every comment, and your experience matters not just to me, but to our entire community of awakening individuals who are navigating this path together. The social world we inhabit is largely constructed around shared assumptions and agreements about what is real, what is important, and what deserves our attention. Most of these agreements are implicit, never discussed openly but maintained through subtle rewards and punishments. Those who conform to these collective illusions are rewarded with belonging, acceptance, and a sense of normalcy. Those who see through them and speak about what they see often experience rejection, ridicule, or are simply dismissed as being too negative, too sensitive, or too dramatic. This is part of the price of seeing what is, rather than what we collectively pretend be true. The awakened individual often finds themselves making a difficult choice: speak their truth and face social consequences, or remain silent and suffer the internal dissonance of living inauthentically. This brings us to another important aspect of Piaget's work, the concept of schemas. Schemas are the mental categories we create to organize and make sense of our experiences. As children develop, their schemas become more numerous and complex, allowing for more sophisticated understanding. In spiritual awakening, we undergo a similar process of developing new schemas to categorize and understand experiences that don't fit into conventional frameworks of reality. We begin to recognize energetic patterns, synchronicities, and subtle communications that were previously invisible to us. We develop new languages and concepts to describe these experiences. But because these schemas aren't shared by the majority, communication becomes challenging. How do you describe colors to someone who sees in black and white? How do you explain the sensation of energetic awareness to someone who recognizes only physical sensation? This is perhaps one of the most painful aspects of awakening, the difficulty of bridging the gap between your experience and the experience of those still operating from different cognitive frameworks. You may find that relationships that once felt close and connected now feel distant and superficial. Conversations that once flowed easily now feel constrained by the limitations of what can and cannot be acknowledged. You might begin to recognize how much of our social interaction is based on collectively agreed upon avoidance of certain truths, and your inability or unwillingness to participate in this avoidance can create friction and distance. The awakening person often experiences periods of profound loneliness, not because they're physically isolated, but because they are perceptually isolated, seeing and feeling dimensions of experience that aren't validated or even recognized by those around them. But this isolation, painful as it may be, serves an important purpose in the developmental process. Just as Piaget observed that cognitive growth requires periods of disequilibrium and reorganization, spiritual growth requires periods of separation from consensus reality to allow new understandings to emerge and stabilize. When you're constantly immersed in environments that reinforce limited perceptions, it's difficult to maintain your awareness of what lies beyond those limitations. The sense of disconnection from others creates space for deeper connection with yourself, with your own direct experience unmediated by collective agreements about what is real or important. This period of turning inward is not about rejection of others, but about establishing an authentic relationship with your own perceptions before re-engaging with the social world. During this phase of the journey, many awakening individuals find that they need to consciously curate their social environments. They may withdraw from relationships that demand compliance with limited perceptions, seeking instead connections with others who share their expanded awareness or at least respect its existence. This is not elitism or judgment, but a practical recognition that different developmental stages create different perceptual realities, just as Piaget recognized that children at different cognitive stages literally perceive and understand the world differently. The awakened individual doesn't insist that others see what they see, but does require the freedom to honor their own perceptions rather than deny them for the comfort of others. Many people misunderstand this need for authentic engagement as selfishness or social withdrawal. They may accuse the awakening person of thinking they're better than others, of being judgmental, or of creating unnecessary drama. What these criticisms miss is that the awakening individual isn't choosing to see the uncomfortable aspects of reality, the incongruities and dishonesties that permeate much of human interaction. The seeing happens spontaneously as awareness expands, and once seen, these things cannot be unseen. The choice isn't whether to perceive these deeper truths, but how to respond to them, how to live with integrity while maintaining compassion for those whose awareness doesn't yet encompass what yours does. This is where Piaget's understanding of developmental stages becomes particularly relevant. Piaget recognized that cognitive development isn't simply a matter of accumulating more information, but involves qualitative changes in how information is processed and understood. A child in the concrete operational stage doesn't just know more than a child in the pre-operational stage. They think differently, organize information differently, and perceive reality differently. Similarly, awakening consciousness isn't just about knowing more facts or having more information. It's about a fundamental shift in how reality is perceived and processed. Just as we wouldn't expect a child in an earlier developmental stage to understand concepts that require more advanced cognitive structures, we cannot expect those who haven't experienced certain shifts in consciousness to understand perceptions that arise from those shifts. This understanding can help alleviate some of the frustration and isolation that comes with awakening. The issue isn't that others are deliberately choosing ignorance or denial. It's that their current cognitive and perceptual frameworks literally don't allow for certain kinds of awareness. Just as Piaget described how children must build cognitive structures sequentially, each stage providing the foundation for the next, consciousness evolves through stages that cannot be skipped or forced. Your role as an awakening individual isn't to drag others into your perception, but to embody the truth of your awareness in a way that creates space for others' natural evolution of consciousness. The integration phase of awakening involves finding ways to honor your expanded perception while engaging compassionately with those who don't share it. This doesn't mean compromising your truth or pretending not to see what you see. Rather, it means recognizing that everyone is at their own perfect place in their developmental journey, just as you are. It means communicating in ways that can be received by those at different stages of awareness, translating your insights into languages that can be understood within different frameworks. It means being patient with the process of collective evolution, understanding that consciousness unfolds according to its own timing, not according to our desires or expectations. This integration also involves recognizing that awakening is not a destination, but a continuous process. There is no final stage of development where all is known and understood. Just as Piaget's formal operational stage doesn't represent the end of cognitive development, but the beginning of more sophisticated forms of thinking, spiritual awakening opens a door to ever-deepening levels of awareness and understanding. The price of seeing includes the humility of recognizing how much remains unseen, how much is still developing within your own consciousness. The truly awakened individual doesn't claim to have all the answers, but maintains an openness to continuous evolution and expansion of awareness. If something in these words has resonated with your soul, if you felt that subtle vibration of recognition that confirms a truth you already know within yourself, I invite you to join us on this ongoing journey of awakening. By subscribing to this channel, you're not just accessing content. You're connecting with a community of souls who, like you, are navigating the sometimes challenging terrain of expanded awareness in a world that doesn't always make space for it. Each video is created with the intention of illuminating another aspect of this path we're walking together, offering perspectives and insights that validate your experience and support your continued growth. This isn't about numbers or metrics for me. It's about nurturing this field of consciousness we're cultivating together, creating a space where your perceptions are honored and your journey respected. In the end, the price of seeing what others pretend not to see is balanced by the profound gift of authentic experience. While there is pain in the isolation that can come with expanded awareness, there is also the deep satisfaction of living in alignment with your truth, of experiencing reality without the filters and distortions of collective denial. There's a joy of connecting with others who share this commitment to authentic perception, creating relationships based on genuine seeing and being seen. And there's the opportunity to serve the evolution of consciousness not by forcing awakening on others, but by holding space for it to unfold naturally, by being a living demonstration of the freedom and aliveness that comes from embracing the full spectrum of human experience, including those aspects that our collective agreements would prefer to keep hidden. The journey of awakened consciousness isn't about escaping the human experience, but about embracing it more fully, about removing the artificial constraints on perception that limit our engagement with reality. It's about recognizing, as Piaget did in his research on cognitive development, that our understanding of the world is not given to us fully formed, but is constructed through our interactions with our environment and with each other. The awakened individual takes responsibility for this construction, consciously choosing which perceptions to reinforce and develop rather than passively accepting the limitations imposed by social consensus. This is both the price and the privilege of seeing, the responsibility of choosing how to engage with what you see, how to integrate it into your understanding, and how to communicate it in service of collective evolution. As we continue to navigate this path together, remember that the discomfort of seeing what others deny is not a punishment but a catalyst for growth. The isolation that may come with expanded awareness is not a failure, but a necessary space for integration. The challenge of communicating across different levels of perception is not an obstacle, but an opportunity to develop greater compassion and skill in translation. Every aspect of the awakening journey, even those that feel painful or difficult, serve the evolution of your consciousness and, through you, the evolution of our collective awareness. In honoring the truth of your own perception, even when it differs from a consensus reality around you, you create space for greater authenticity not just in your own life, but in our shared experience of what it means to be human.